Real Madrid have won the first battle, beating Benfica 1-0 at the Estádio do Sport Lisboa e Benfica. The only goal of the game came from Vinícius Júnior in the 50th minute. Now, let's break down the tactics from both sides. José Mourinho set Benfica up in a 4-2-3-1 formation. The approach was clear: sit deep, stay compact, and frustrate Madrid by parking the bus. The double pivot protected the back four, while the three attacking midfielders stayed narrow to block central passing lanes. Benfica looked to absorb pressure and then explode forward on the counterattack, targeting the spaces left behind Madrid's advancing fullbacks. On the other side, Álvaro Arbeloa lined Real Madrid up in a 4-4-2 system, aiming to outmaneuver his former boss. Madrid focused on controlling possession and stretching Benfica's defensive block. The two strikers occupied the center backs, while the wide midfielders provided width to pin back Benfica's fullbacks. Their patience and circulation eventually paid off, with Vinícius capitalizing early in the second half to give Madrid the advantage. When Benfica had possession, they built from the back in a very typical Mourinho fashion. Rather than using modern fullback rotations or inverted movements into midfield, José Mourinho structured the first phase almost like a back five. The goalkeeper stepped into the defensive line, allowing the two center backs to split very wide. The fullbacks stayed wide and hugged the touchline but did not push high up the pitch. At the same time, the double pivot dropped deeper to help circulate the ball and provide safe passing angles. The idea was to create numerical superiority in the initial build-up while tempting Real Madrid to commit more players forward in the press. Mourinho wanted Madrid to overcommit so Benfica could exploit the space left behind with quick long balls and sharp switches of play into the flanks. One clear example came when Madrid deployed 6 players to press Benfica inside their own half. That left only 4 Madrid outfield players protecting their defensive half. As soon as Samuel Dahl received the ball, he immediately launched a long pass into the flank for Andreas Schelderup to attack Madrid's back line. The intention was to bypass the press entirely and create a direct transition moment. However, throughout most of the match, Dean Huijsen handled these situations very well, winning his duels and limiting the threat. To counter Benfica's progression, Madrid used a zonal-oriented man-marking press. They deliberately forced Benfica to build through one side, before applying very aggressive man-to-man pressure, effectively using the touchline as an extra defender. The pressing trigger was clear. Once a fullback received the ball, Madrid would immediately tighten the space around him. When Amar Dedic received possession, the trap was activated instantly. Kylian Mbappé blocked the passing lane back to Tomás Araujo. Arda Güler tracked and pressed Leandro Barreiro. Aurélien Tchouaméni marked Gianluca Prestiani, and Eduardo Camavinga pressed Dedic directly. With the touchline restricting space and every close passing option tightly covered, Dedic had no clean escape. Under heavy pressure, he played the ball out of play, handing Madrid a throw-in deep inside Benfica's half. It was a clear tactical battle between Mourinho's bait-and-break approach and Madrid's coordinated pressing traps, and in these moments, Madrid consistently came out on top. When Benfica managed to bypass Real Madrid's initial high press, Madrid immediately dropped into a compact 4-4-2 mid-block. The transition from aggressive pressing to structural control was seamless. The two strikers stayed narrow to screen passes into midfield, while the second line of 4 compressed the central corridor, reducing the space between the lines to deny Benfica access to the number 10 zone. Madrid's priority in this phase was central protection. They were comfortable allowing Benfica to circulate possession in deeper or wider areas, but they aggressively closed the interior channels. The distances between midfield and defense were tight, preventing vertical passes into the feet of attacking midfielders. As a result, Benfica often had sterile possession, controlled circulation without penetration. When Benfica tried to progress through the wide channels, Madrid adjusted by creating immediate overloads on the ball side. On Madrid's right flank, Trent Alexander-Arnold worked in tandem with Federico Valverde to double up against Andreas Schelderup. Alexander-Arnold engaged from the outside in, while Valverde supported from the inside channel, preventing Schelderup from cutting inside onto his stronger foot. This forced Benfica either backward or toward the byline under pressure. On the opposite flank, Eduardo Camavinga and Álvaro Carreras applied the same principle against Gianluca Prestiani. Camavinga's athleticism allowed him to step out aggressively, while Carreras provided cover and balance behind him. The doubling mechanism ensured Benfica's wingers were consistently outnumbered in isolation scenarios. There were moments when Benfica threatened, particularly during quick transitions or when they managed to switch play early before Madrid's block could shift across. However, most of these situations were handled decisively by Antonio Rüdiger and Dean Huijsen. Rüdiger dominated physical duels and attacked crosses aggressively, while Huijsen's positioning and anticipation helped extinguish second ball situations around the edge of the box. When Real Madrid had possession, their attacking structure was fluid and heavily left-sided in occupation but flexible in rotation. The most interesting movement came from Álvaro Carreras, who frequently stepped into the left half space rather than holding a traditional fullback width. This allowed Madrid to create a 5-lane occupation across the final third. On that left side, Vinícius Júnior and Federico Valverde often provided the width at different moments, stretching Benfica's backline horizontally. Inside them, Arda Güler and Carreras occupied the half spaces, positioning themselves between Benfica's midfield and defensive lines. Kylian Mbappé operated as the central striker, pinning the center-backs and creating depth with constant runs across the defensive line. Out of possession, Benfica did not attempt to press Madrid's backline aggressively. Instead, they dropped into a compact 4-4-2 low block. The distances between their midfield and defensive lines were extremely tight, closing central access and inviting Madrid to circulate the ball in deeper areas. This meant Madrid's defenders had time and space to step forward and look for line-breaking passes, but penetrating through the middle remained difficult for large portions of the game due to Benfica's compactness. To destabilize that structure, Madrid relied on constant positional rotations. Carreras would occasionally drop deeper to attract pressure, while Eduardo Camavinga moved higher or wider to occupy the vacated space. These rotations were designed to disrupt Benfica's defensive references and create momentary gaps between lines. By shifting roles dynamically, Madrid tried to manipulate the shape of the block rather than simply forcing passes through it. One clear strategy was the creation of overloads on one flank before switching or penetrating. At times, particularly on the right side, Camavinga, Carreras, Vinícius, and Dean Huijsen formed a 4-man combination unit. Through underlapping and overlapping runs, quick third-man combinations, and cutback attempts, Madrid were able to progress into the final third and generate shooting opportunities. The numerical superiority in these wide zones forced Benfica's wide midfielder and fullback to defend multiple threats simultaneously. However, despite creating chances through structured possession, Madrid looked most dangerous in transition. The winning goal perfectly illustrated this. Valverde recovered the ball inside Madrid's own half, immediately triggering a vertical counterattack. Within seconds, Madrid had advanced through Benfica's stretched structure. Mbappé carried the ball forward and released it at the right moment to Vinícius. Cutting inside onto his stronger foot, Vinícius bent a precise, curling shot beyond the goalkeeper and into the far corner. It was a classic example of controlled build-up meeting explosive transition. While Madrid worked patiently to break down Benfica's low block through rotations and overloads, it was their speed and directness in counterattack that ultimately decided the game.